She simply looked at him and smiled. Not the kind of smile that comes from happiness, but the kind that makes a room feel suddenly colder. Ethan scoffed, completely misreading the moment. What? You think smiling fixes this? He snapped, chest rising as adrenaline took over. Mind your business. The entire store was frozen. A mother clutched her child closer. A man near the shoe display slowly lowered his phone, unsure whether to keep recording. The cashier's hands were shaking now. The woman gently adjusted her sleeve, straightened her posture, and spoke in a calm, steady voice. Is this how you speak to people you think are beneath you? Ethan rolled his eyes. You're just a manager. You think you matter? That's when she turned, not to Ethan, but to the staff. Does anyone here know why he's upset? She asked. No one answered. They avoided her eyes. The same staff who had watched the argument, who had watched the slap, suddenly found the floor very interesting. She nodded slowly, as if confirming something she already knew. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. One call, one sentence. Cancel all meetings. I'm handling this personally. Her tone changed. Still calm, but now sharp. Controlled. Powerful. Ethan laughed again. Wow. Scary. She finally looked directly at him. My name is Amara Blake, she said, and I own this company. The word own echoed through the store. Ethan's smile vanished. The staff's heads snapped up. The cashier's mouth fell open. A manager near the back went pale. You're lying, Ethan stammered. Amara tapped her phone. Within seconds, the large digital display behind the counter changed, flashing a corporate welcome screen. Amara Blake, CEO and founder. Silence. You could hear someone swallow. Ethan took a step back. I didn't know. No, Amara interrupted gently. You didn't care. She turned to the staff again. I watched from the moment this started, she said. I saw a customer shouting. I saw fear. I saw silence. Her eyes moved from face to face. And I saw none of you do your jobs. A lump formed in Ethan's throat. You slapped me. Amara continued, returning her gaze to him. Not because you were angry about a refund, but because you thought you had power. She paused, and power reveals character. Security arrived, summoned quietly minutes earlier. Escort him out, Amara said, and file a report. Ethan tried to speak, but no words came. As he was led away, the crowd slowly exhaled. Amara turned to the cashier, her voice soft again. Are you okay? The cashier nodded, eyes wet. Then Amara faced the staff one last time. This store is closed for the rest of the day, she said. Tomorrow, we begin retraining. Anyone unwilling to protect dignity, employee or customer, does not belong here. She picked up her purse and walked toward the exit. The sting on her cheek would fade. But the lesson? That would last forever. The silence after the slap was heavier than the sound itself. No one moved. Not the security guards. Not the staff. Even the background music felt too loud now, awkwardly playing through the speakers as if nothing had happened. Ethan stood tall, shoulders back, wearing a smug half-smile. To him, this was over. He had made his point. You people think you're better than customers, he said loudly, making sure everyone heard. Learn some respect. The cashier's eyes were filled with fear. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter. A security guard took a step forward, then stopped. The woman adjusted her jacket calmly, as if someone had merely bumped into her. No one touch him, she said softly. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. That confused everyone. The guards froze. Ethan frowned. What? She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out her phone, stepped slightly to the side, and made a call. Yes, she said. I'm at the flagship store. Please come now. That was it. No anger. No explanation. She ended the call and leaned against the counter, arms relaxed, expression unreadable, like someone waiting for coffee, not someone who had just been humiliated in public. 5 minutes passed. They felt long. Ethan shifted his weight from one foot to the other. The confidence on his face began to crack. Customers whispered. A few phones came out again, but this time not to mock, to record. Why are you staring at me? Ethan snapped, pointing at a man near the entrance. No one answered him. The automatic doors slid open. 2 black sedans stopped outside. For people walked in, Sharp suits, earpieces, confident steps. One of them headed straight for the woman and stopped a few feet away. "Ms. Blake," he said respectfully, "are you hurt?" Every head in the store snapped toward her. Ethan's face drained of color. Ms. Blake straightened and nodded. "I'm Fina. Thank you for coming so quickly." The man turned to the security guards. "Why hasn't he been detained?" The guards exchanged panicked looks. "Detained?" Ethan laughed nervously. "For what?" The man ignored him and handed Ms. Blake a tablet. On the screen was live footage from the store's cameras. Every angle, every second. The argument, the slap, the reaction. Ms. Blake watched without emotion. Then she looked at Ethan. "You felt powerful," she said quietly, "because you thought no one here mattered." She gestured around the store. "You were wrong." The man in the suit spoke again. "Sir, you're being removed for assault. Authorities have been notified." Ethan's mouth opened. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding. I didn't know who she was." Ms. Blake's eyes hardened for the first time. "That," she said, "is the problem." As Ethan was escorted out, the store remained silent. No applause, no cheers. Just realization. Ms. Blake turned to the cashier. "You did nothing wrong," she said gently. Then to the staff. "Respect isn't demanded," she added. "It's protected." She walked away, leaving behind a room full of people who would never forget what real power looks like. That's when Clara's calm expression disappeared. Not into rage, not into shouting, into something far more dangerous, clarity. She took a slow breath and looked around the store, really looked. At the employees who had stepped back. At the managers who had pretended not to see. At the security guards who had waited for permission instead of doing what was right. "When I built this company," Clara said, her voice firm and steady, "it wasn't just to sell luxury products. It was to set a standard." She paused, letting her words sink in. A standard of respect, of safety, of basic human decency. Ethan swallowed hard. The smugness was gone now, replaced by panic. His hands trembled slightly at his sides. I didn't know," he muttered. "If I had known." Clara turned her head sharply toward him. "You didn't know who I was," she said. "But you knew who she was." She pointed gently toward the cashier, who flinched when she realized attention was on her. "You knew she was alone. You knew she was nervous. And you decided that gave you permission." Ethan shook his head. "I was just angry. I didn't mean—" "Intent does not erase impact," Clara cut in. The executives behind her remained silent, but their presence filled the room. One of them was already taking notes. Another was watching the staff closely, eyes sharp. Clara turned back to the employees. "Not one of you intervened," she said. "Not when a customer shouted. Not when a line was crossed. And not when a woman was assaulted in front of you." Her voice didn't rise, but the weight of it pressed down on everyone. "This," she continued, "is not fear. This is indifference." The store manager stepped forward, sweating. "Ma'am, we're just trying to avoid escalating the situation." Clara raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "Silence protects the aggressor," she said, "not the victim." She looked at the executives. "Close the store." The manager's eyes widened. "Close it? But now." One executive nodded and spoke into his headset. The lights dimmed slightly. The front doors locked. Customers murmured in confusion, but no one dared argue. Clara faced Ethan one last time. "You thought power was about volume," she said quietly. "About intimidation. About making others feel small." She stepped closer, not threatening, just present. "Real power," she said, "is knowing you don't have to raise your hand to be heard." Security finally moved in, this time without hesitation. "Sir," one guard said firmly, "you need to come with us." Ethan's voice cracked. "Please. I'll apologize. I'll say sorry to everyone." Clara shook her head. "Apologies after consequences are just fear talking," she said. "And today, fear is exactly what you earned." As Ethan was escorted away, the store remained silent. Clara turned back to the cashier and softened her tone. "You're safe," she said, "and you matter here." Tears welled up in the cashier's eyes. Clara then addressed the staff one final time. "Tomorrow, this store reopens with new leadership, mandatory retraining, and zero tolerance for abuse," she said. "If that makes anyone uncomfortable, there are other places to work." She picked up her coat and walked toward the exit. Behind her, no one moved, because everyone in that store had just learned the same lesson. Respect isn't optional, and power always reveals who you really are. Clara took a deep breath. 5 minutes ago, I was slapped in my own store, she said, her voice steady but carrying across every corner of the room. And what shocked me most wasn't the slap. She let the silence stretch, heavy and uncomfortable. It was the cowardice. Her eyes moved with precision, landing on each person like a spotlight. She pointed at the store manager. You watched. The manager opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Her fingers shifted toward security. You hesitated. The guards stiffened, shame written clearly on their faces. Then she turned to the staff line behind the counter. And you, she said quietly, chose comfort over integrity. Some employees looked down. Others began to shake. A few wiped tears from their eyes, realizing, too late, that silence had consequences. Clara straightened, her voice now firm, unmistakable. Leadership is not about titles, she said. It's about action when it's uncomfortable. And today, none of you acted. She paused, then delivered the words that would explode across social media within hours. You're all fired. The reaction was instant. Gasps ripped through the store. Someone began to cry. Another employee dropped to a chair in shock. Ma'am, please, the manager begged, stepping forward. We can explain. No, Clara interrupted, raising her hand. Her tone wasn't angry. It was final. This company stands for dignity. And today, you failed to protect it. She turned slightly, addressing the executives behind her. Process the terminations immediately. Effective now. One of them nodded without hesitation. The room felt like it was collapsing in on itself. Clara then turned to Ethan. He no longer looked tall, or confident, or powerful. His shoulders were slumped, his face pale. His eyes darted around, searching for sympathy and finding none. As for you, Clara said calmly, the law will decide. Ethan shook his head desperately. I didn't mean it like that. I was angry. I lost control. You didn't lose control, Clara said. You revealed it. That was enough. Security finally stepped in, this time without hesitation, without fear, without excuses. Sir, please come with us, one guard said firmly. Ethan didn't resist. As he was escorted toward the exit, the store remained silent. No one watched him leave with anger anymore, only understanding. Understanding that moments like this define who we are. Clara walked over to the cashier, who was trembling, eyes red. You did nothing wrong, Clara said gently. And I'm sorry you stood alone. The cashier nodded, tears spilling freely now, not from fear but relief. Clara turned back to the remaining customers. The store will be closed for the rest of the day, she announced. Anyone affected will receive a full refund and a personal apology. She picked up her coat, touching her cheek one last time. Not in pain, but in resolve. By the time she reached the door, phones were already buzzing. Videos were uploading. Headlines were being written. But Clara didn't look back, because for her, this was never about going viral. It was about drawing a line and proving that dignity is not negotiable, especially in her house. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Man slaps CEO, she fires entire store staff. It flooded timelines, news feeds, group chats. The video clips were short, shaky, and raw, but the message was crystal clear. People replayed the moment Clara named herself. They replayed the silence of the staff. They replayed the words, asterisk, you're all fired. Asterisk, but something interesting happened. The internet didn't focus on the slap for long. It focused on why everything that followed felt so powerful. Commentators, business leaders, and everyday people all said the same thing in different ways. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about ego. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about values. Claire didn't fire people because she was angry. She fired them because they had chosen silence over responsibility, because they had watched fear spread and did nothing, because they had confused politeness with professionalism and safety with inconvenience. One post went viral overnight. Leadership isn't proven when things are easy. It's proven in the 5 minutes when everything goes wrong. Another read. The most dangerous words in any workplace are asterisk, it's not my problem. Asterisk, employees from other companies shared stories, moments when they wish someone had stepped in. Customers admitted times they had stayed quiet instead of speaking up. Managers debated whether Clara's decision was harsh. But even many who disagreed admitted one thing. She was clear, and clarity is rare. A week later, the flagship store reopened. The lights were brighter, the layout cleaner, the atmosphere different. A completely new team stood behind the counters, trained not just in sales, but in de-escalation, accountability, and empathy. Security stood alert, not intimidating, but present. Managers didn't hover in offices. They stayed on the floor. At the entrance, a simple sign had been placed. No logo, no branding, just words. In this store, dignity comes first, no exceptions. Customers noticed. Some paused to read it twice. Others nodded quietly as they walked in. A few even took photos. Inside, the cashier who had once stood trembling behind the counter was gone, promoted to a corporate support role, according to quiet reports. Clara never announced it publicly. She didn't need to. Her actions spoke louder than any press release. As for Ethan, his name faded quickly from headlines. That part of the story was never the point. People didn't remember him for who he was. They remembered him for what he represented. Entitlement, unchecked anger, the belief that status determines worth. And somewhere out there, at a counter, in a meeting, in a moment of frustration, thousands of people remembered this story before raising their voice or their hand. They remembered that respect is not automatic, that silence is a decision, and that consequences don't always wait. Because sometimes in just 5 minutes, you don't just lose your temper, you lose everything.